Hi everyone, Dave Prowse here with a video about A+220-901 questions. In this video, I'm going to show my approach to answering exam questions. This video gets into the mindset you want to have when taking the exams. I'll show you how to analyze the question itself, what the correct answer is and why, and also why the incorrect answers are incorrect. Let's begin with question number 1. Your company has a server on an intranet that is responsible for hostname to IP address resolutions. Which of the following inbound ports should be open on the server in order to facilitate this function? Well, without even looking at the answers, we should be able to figure out what the answer is. And we do that by looking at some of the key phrases in the question. So, for example, we have here hostname to IP address resolutions. And if you've been studying, you should know what that is. You should understand what type of device or server does hostname to IP address resolutions. You should understand that technology. We also see here inbound ports. They should be open on the server. So some key words and key phrases here that you want to look at. So keep those in mind as we go through the answers. And so we'll show the answers now. The possible answers: A is 21, port number 21. B is port 25. C is port 53. And D is port 80. Now, usually you'll get a multiple choice question like this, and you'll have 4 possible answers that you have to select from. But sometimes there will be more than 4 possible answers, such as the case here: E, port 427, and F, port 548. So we look at these answers and we want to try to pick the best possible answer based on the question. And remember, we said hostname to IP address resolution. Well, that's done by DNS, and that is done with port 53 by default. Port 53 is the correct answer. Now, DNS basically works. Let's say you're at your computer and you want to go to a website and you want to hit something www.whatever. You could be davidlprowse.com or who knows what. When you do that, though, your request, that name that you type in, that request is sent to a DNS server. And that guy's got to translate the name, the host name or the web address, into its corresponding IP address before it can actually get to that web server. And to do that, the DNS server needs to have port 53 open on the inbound side. So when you make those requests from your computer, it initially goes to the DNS server with port 53 open. That translates from hostname to IP address, and then that sends that over to that correct server, whatever that server is, and it does it by IP address. That could be 65.14.58.121 or who knows what. It could be any IP address that that server is using. You don't really want to know usually. Usually as a user, you want to just know the name, www.whatever, or http://whatever. And let the DNS server take care of the name resolution over to the web server. And so that's going to be the answer. 53 is DNS, and that is the domain name system. All the DNS servers that are out there, and there's lots of them within the internet, they're all part of the domain name system. And so these are known as domain name system servers or DNS servers. Okay, so that's a little bit about DNS. Now, there's other answers here, and we want to know why the other answers are incorrect. So the first one here is FTP. Port 21 is FTP, the File Transfer Protocol. That's when you send files from one computer to a File Transfer Protocol server, or FTP server, or in the other direction, vice versa, from the FTP server down to the client. So that's not correct. We're looking for hostname to IP address resolutions. So 21 is FTP. 25 is SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. And SMTP servers are email servers. So if you're ever sending mail, say from your application that runs email like Outlook or what have you, that's going to go out to an SMTP server. Sometimes it depends what server you're using, but a very common way to do this is to send it to an SMTP server. And so that guy needs to have port 25 open. Likewise, FTP needs to have port 21 open to accept file transfer protocol sessions. 80 is HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. That's when you're connecting to websites. And quite often that's the default. It's port 80 HTTP. And some websites nowadays are using HTTPS. So for example, if you go to Wikipedia, by default, it'll be HTTPS. So that's HTTP secure. That actually uses port 443. 427 is the Service Location Protocol, or SLP. And that enables computers and other devices to access network services without prior configuration. And so that's important to know. You want to know that one for the exam as well. And then finally, 548 is AFP, or the Apple Filing Protocol. And that allows OS X computers to transfer files across the network. Usually it's AFP over TCP. And so that's a lot of protocols. You want to know the correct answer here. You want to know what DNS is. You want to know it uses port 53, how it works. And you want to know these other protocols as well, and a whole list of other protocols. And I list them in my books and in videos and everything. So you want to know the whole list. And check out the CompTIA objectives to see the list that you should know, and check out my books and videos to find out more about them. In addition, though, you can go on the intranet and go to the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority. And you can do that by typing in just port listing or port assignment or IANA ports. Just about any of those searches will bring you to this page at the IANA.org. It's the Service Name and Transport Protocol Port Number Registry. This has a listing of all the commonly used ports and the applications that use them. And if we scroll down here, we'll see we have the list in numerical order. And you can see here is FTP to port 21, SMTP, port 25, and so on and so on. If we go to the second page and scroll down, we'll see here we are, 53. That's DNS, that's domain name system. They say domain name server here. That's okay. You're going to see various names for that on the internet. The proper name is domain name system, and you would run a DNS server within that system. And you can also search. If we go back to the top, we have a search field here. So if you weren't sure about a particular port number, you could search for it and say 427 and press enter. And that tells you SVR LOC. That's short for server location. And that's the server location protocol. Or say 548. And you see here AFP over TCP. That's Apple Filing Protocol over Transmission Control Protocol using port 548. So you can find out lots more about this from here. And then if you want to find out more about the actual protocols, well, then you could do a request for comments and go to the Internet Engineering Task Force at ietf.org. And you can learn more about just about any protocol that's out there. So whatever you were interested in, TCP, DNS, and that'll give you all the data about those protocols. And you can see that some RFCs are actually listed here for ports themselves. And as those are requests for comments. So those are two great sites to go to, the IANA and also the IETF, because that'll have all the RFCs for you. Two sites that you should definitely go to, IANA and IETF. And that's about it for that question. And again, remember, you want to take a look at these different phrases and words that are being used and focus in and really think about the question, then look at all the answers until you're sure of the correct answer. And when you're studying, know why the incorrect answers are incorrect. Okay, so question number 2. I'll move a little faster now. One of the users in your company has a laptop that has difficulty obtaining a wireless connection in certain areas of the building. Interestingly, users in common areas of the building have no problem with wireless connectivity. Which of the following is the most likely cause? Is it A, an old Ethernet driver, or B, weak RF signal? Which, by the way, right off the bat is jumping out at me. Or is it C, duplicate IP address? Or D, MAC filtering was enabled at the Soho router? Well, here's the deal. I'm looking at connections in certain areas, the wireless connection in certain areas of the building, but the users in common areas of the building have no problem. That really spells out to me that it's some type of signal issue. And that indeed is the answer, weak RF signal, weak radio frequency signal. You have to remember that every obstruction that's between you and the wireless access point is going to pretty much cut your transmission distance in half. Walls, doors, and so on. It could be equipment or shielding. That's really going to cause the wireless connection to be either very slow or not connect at all. But the users in the common areas of the building, where say the cubicles are, or perhaps in a reception area, they have no problem because that's the closest usually to the wireless access point. You know, I might put a wireless access point on the ceiling in the center of all of the cubicles, or perhaps in the center of a group of offices, or in the center on the ceiling of a reception area. So if you have a weak RF signal, then you're going to have trouble connecting in certain areas of the building. But in other areas, in the common areas, you won't have a problem. Now we pretty much know why those other answers are incorrect. You know, so for example, old Ethernet driver. The thing is this, when you say Ethernet, you're usually referring to a wired connection, not a wireless connection. And either way, if it's old, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. So an old driver isn't necessarily bad, but if it's a wireless driver, you usually do want to try to upgrade that driver. It may enhance the code and give you a better connection. It's, you know, you can't make the antenna any more powerful without changing out the adapter, the wireless adapter. But if you do upgrade the driver for a wireless card, it could help your connection. But Ethernet is really referring to a wired connection, so that's not really something we're interested in here. Duplicate IP address. Well, generally, if there's a duplicate IP address on the network, both of those computers will have problems connecting, or at the very least, the second computer that gets the same IP address will have problems connecting. And you have to fix those computers. If they're supposed to be connecting manually, then you want to make sure that each one has a different IP address and you statically set that on each system. But generally, you'll be connecting through DHCP. And sometimes what happens is one system is connecting with a manual IP address, and maybe that just has to be changed over to DHCP. If that's the case, you do need to fix that. But if it is the case, generally, you won't be able to connect at all from those systems, whether it's a wireless connection or a wired connection. And so again, here, there's difficulty obtaining wireless connection in certain areas, but not all areas. The common areas are okay, and the wireless connections work. And finally, MAC filtering was enabled at the Soho router. Well, MAC filtering is a good idea for security. This allows you to either have a list of MAC addresses that are allowed to connect, or you could exclude specific MAC addresses from connecting. But it's all or nothing. You either can connect or you can't. And you could do MAC filtering for wired connections or wireless, but that's the whole idea. You either get in or you don't. So it's actually a pretty simple question. It's a paragraph question with a scenario, but it's actually a pretty simple question. We just don't have a good enough signal in certain areas of the building. That's it. So that's question number 2. Moving on, question 3. Which of the following adapters will convert an analog signal to a digital signal? A, VGA to DVI-D. Or answer B, DVI-D to HDMI. Answer C, HDMI to VGA. And answer D, S-video to RCA. Well, the best answer for this is going to be VGA to DVI-D, and that's the only answer that will convert analog to digital. You have your VGA connection, video graphics array. That by default is an analog connection. For example, that 15-pin video connection that may come out of some monitors. And you will still see that for various types of technologies. many people are using DVI or HDMI or DisplayPort or whatever, but you may still see VGA and you may need to convert it as well. DVI-D is indeed digital and digital only. So that's going to be the best answer for converting analog signal to digital signal. And you never know. You might have a DVI-D monitor. You might have a monitor with an input that's DVI-D, and you have a VGA card. And so that VGA card or adapter in the computer needs to be adapted over to digital. Now here we have DVI-D. Answer B says DVI-D to HDMI, but those are both digital. So there's no conversion here. There's an adapter, but there's no conversion from any different types of signals. Here we have HDMI to VGA, and that would be digital to analog. And there's adapters for this as well if you need that. And then S-video to RCA. And so that's not analog to digital either. So none of these are correct except for VGA to DVI-D. That's the only one that is analog to digital. And you see I have some images here for the ports, and you want to know these ports. You want to be able to identify them and know whether they're analog or digital also. Question 4. You are servicing a printer and notice fine black particles on printouts and inside the printer itself. Which of the following tools should be used to fix the problem? A. Compressed air. B. A moist towel. C. Toner vacuum. Or D. Denatured alcohol. And the best answer for this is going to be the toner vacuum. That's the one we want. You want to use some type of vacuum to get these fine black particles out. You don't want to just blow them all over the place with compressed air. Now, if you're working on a computer that has embedded dust inside of it, then you might take the computer into the lab or into the shop or outside and use compressed air and then use a toner, a PC vacuum, basically. It's pretty much the same type of thing. But for the printer itself, you're probably not going to move the printer around. And what you want to do is you want to just vacuum out all that excess toner from the trays, from the rollers, from inside there. Make sure you use the right type of vacuum. And here's an example. Here's the Metro vacuum. And you can see here the different equipment and nozzles you can get so you can reach in there. And these are, they'll protect you from ESD and they won't cause any damage to the computer or to the printer that you're working with. So that's something you want to utilize. A moist towel is not going to be any good because you really don't want to get any moisture in the printer. It could possibly work, but not really the best way to do it. You want to suck that stuff out cleanly. And these vacuums, these PC vacuums have like a double filter system so that toner will not get back into the atmosphere. Denatured alcohol, once in a while you'll use those on the rubber rollers in a printer, say in a laser printer, in order to clean them, but over time that'll dry those out and cause them to crack and not function properly. So the best answer here is going to be the toner vacuum or just a regular PC vacuum or computer vacuum. That's the best if you see those fine black particles on the printouts and on the inside of the printer itself. And then in addition, you should probably change out the toner cartridge in the printer and consider doing the maintenance for it. Get the maintenance kit for it and do everything on that. Change out everything that needs to be changed out. Question 5. One of your coworkers tells you that his mouse is not working properly. You notice that the mouse cursor spins for a minute before you can actually use the mouse. Which of the following is the most likely cause of the issue? Is it A, failed operating system, or B, a faulty mouse, C, not enough memory, and D, a faulty CPU? Well, this one could trip some people up. If you have worked with mice before, you might say, well, mice fail all the time and connections could be bad and stuff like that. But one of the keys in this question is going to be that the mouse cursor is spinning for a minute or so before you can actually use that mouse. So that's going to be the key here. The best answer is going to be not enough memory. And what it means basically is you're trying to click on things, you're trying to open applications, you're trying to do things graphically within the operating system, but the system just can't handle it. There's not enough memory in order to do what you need to do. And it could be RAM, most likely, or it could be video memory. The video card might not have enough memory to do what you need to do graphically. But generally, it's an application that is giving you some trouble. And it could be that the application is using too much memory, or there's another application that's using too much memory, or there's a memory hole in the system, or you just don't have enough physical RAM on the computer. It's not going to be that you have a failed operating system. If you see that spinning cursor, if you see that spinning circle or that beach ball, if you're using OS 10, but if you see that mouse cursor isn't a regular cursor and it's spinning, that usually means that it's just not accessing properly. The CPU might be being used too much, or you might have not enough memory. A faulty CPU, if that's the case, you're not going to be able to actually boot the system, or it'll crash commonly. You won't just get a mouse cursor spinning. Your system will either crash or won't boot. The faulty mouse itself, you might be tempted to answer this, but that's not the case if the mouse cursor is spinning. That means that there's some type of slowdown. The system is either freezing up, or it's halting, or it's just really slow or non-responsive. It's not performing the way you want, and that's because it's not enough memory. Most likely. Again, could be that the CPU is being taxed too much as well. And so you can use various applications in different operating systems to find out what this is. For example, I'll bring up the task manager in Windows here. And if we were to go to processes, we'll see I have all these processes running. And you can see the amount of memory that each is using. So if we can sort this by column header. And if we sort it by clicking it, you'll see I have Pro Tools running. That's using 260 megs. Camtasia Studio is using 176 megs, and so on down the line. If one of these is using, say, a gig or 2 gigs, you might want to find out what it is. It could be virus related, or it could be a poorly written application, or an application that's failing. And then instead of seeing this cursor like you normally would, then you see either the spinning beach ball or the spinning circle or the old school hourglass or whatever. You want to normally see your cursor, the arrow, the pointer. And so you don't want any of these other things. Could be related to an application. So you check it in the task manager. And it'll also show you the amount of CPU usage for each. For example, Pro Tools right now is using 5% of the CPU. Well, it's jumping around. But if you see something that's using, say, 90% or 99%, then you want to check that and see what the deal is with that application or that particular process. And if necessary, you can right-click on one and select End Process. This happens a lot with browsers. If you have too many browser tabs open within Chrome or Edge or Internet Explorer or Firefox, it could cause it to really halt the system, really slow it down, or cause some real performance instabilities. So you could end the process here, and that'll close down chrome.exe or whatever browser you're running. Maybe Word is causing you problems. So you can actually end those processes here, or end them via the application that's running. And you can also look at your performance and see how well your CPU is doing and how much memory you're using. Now, this particular system has 16 gigs of memory, and I'm using 4.3 gigs right now, which is a considerable amount, but it's okay. We have plenty more memory where that came from as far as hard RAM goes. But the CPUs are being used pretty much. It's hovering, especially if I do things graphically. Everything's being recorded into this computer. There's a lot going on and a lot of applications running. So we're hovering between 30 and 50% of the CPU usage. And again, 4.3 gigs. So you can tell a lot with the task manager within Windows. But again, if you need to find out which process is using the most memory or the most CPU power, and disable that guy. And then you can find out what the real problem is. You might need to uninstall the application or disable it within msconfig or what have you. So a lot of options there. And so best answer is going to be not enough memory for this. Remember, this question was asking you about the mouse cursor spinning a minute before you can actually use it. So again, generally that's some type of memory issue. In this case, the best answer, not enough memory. Okay, so there was 5 questions for you, but I always like to give more. So here's one bonus question. Question 6, your organization's building suffered a blackout last night. Today, one of the workstations won't boot. As you analyze the system, you find that it has a lit power light, but is not displaying anything on the screen and is not making any sounds when you press the power button. Which of the following can you utilize to further troubleshoot the system? Let's look at the possible answers. A, multimeter. B, loopback plug. C, postcard. Or D, PSU tester. Now, historically, the best answer for this would be C, postcard. That's the power on self-test card. And, for the longest time, we used these with computers that had ISA slots and also PCI slots, and really big in PCI. But you don't see as many postcards nowadays with PCI Express. PCIe, you really just don't see them, but you do see them for PCI. So, you can find some PCI Express postcards out there. You might see them on Amazon or on eBay, but they may work, they may not. It all depends on several factors. You might also use something that's USB based, but nowadays some motherboards come with a built-in post, a power on self-test with analysis, and it has a little readout that'll go from 00 all the way to FF. And this is hexadecimal, and you basically have 256 possible values. And any one of those numbers, let's say it comes up as 86, that could mean that there's some type of RAM issue. And for example, in the A+ videos I did, and also the A+ exam cram, I show a computer I built, the AV editor. And it uses an Asus motherboard that has this. It has a built-in post tester, and it'll show you these codes, and they call them Q codes. And you just look in the motherboard manufacturer documentation, either the book that came with the motherboard or online, and check the code, and it'll tell you exactly what the issue is. So that's a great tool to use. So whether it's a post card, and some motherboards come with a PCI slot, an older white PCI slot for backward compatibility and for just this purpose, so you could use your old postcard. Or if you have one that happens to be PCI Express or USB based, or you have one built into the motherboard, the post tester is really what we're talking about here, a post tester in general. So you might see a question like this on the A+, because you're still going to deal with a lot of old systems that are PCI based, and you need to get them running. And so that postcard tester could be really helpful. But it works the same way regardless of what tool you're using, as long as it's a post tester. And that's what you want, because you can't see what's happening here. You got a power light, but it's not displaying anything on the screen, and the computer's not making any sounds. So that's a problem. It's hard to troubleshoot something when you can't see or hear anything. And when that's the case, as I say, that usually means it's part of the big four. The problem is related to the big four. And by the big four, I mean it's either the CPU, the motherboard, or MOBO, the RAM, or the video adapter, whether it's a video card or an integrated device. It's going to be one of those four. And without having some type of post-analysis, it's hard to tell. You might have to start swapping out these guys to figure out what the problem is. Sometimes you might need a BIOS reset. Sometimes, if at all possible, you might have a button on the back of the computer that can do that. Sometimes you might need to reseat the CPU or the RAM, or maybe something's not connected properly. Always check those connections. And so if you do these things and you use a postcard tester or some type of post tester or built-in post tester like the Asus boards have, then it'll probably tell you what the answer is. You'll get that code, you'll get that readout, and then you'll be able to figure out what to do from there. Maybe the RAM slots need a cleaning with Stabilant or something like that. So that's going to be the correct answer in this case, but you really got to use your mind. You really got to troubleshoot it step by step and say, okay, Can I see anything? Can I hear anything? If not, then you narrow it down usually to these big four. And you can usually figure out what the problem is at that point. Sometimes it's a burned out device. Sometimes it was something that happened from a electrical storm or a surge or ESD, and you have to figure out what that is. So the post-analysis device can really help you with that. Multimeter is not going to really help us too much because we have a power light, so we know we're getting power to the system, but we're not sure exactly what the problem is. Now, instead of a multimeter, you might use a PSU tester if it has a built-in testing ability for PCI Express or SATA or that kind of thing. And I show these tools in my videos and in the books too. So if you have a PSU tester that has that extra functionality, you might want to use that. But just the PSU tester itself, testing the 24-pin power, well, it's probably not an issue because you're getting the power light. Probably, I should say. And you never know. I mean, it could possibly be that power is a problem, and you could use the PSU tester to test that, or you could use a multimeter to test individual wires on that 24-pin connection. But the best answer here is going to be that post-card or post-analysis. Loopback plug's not going to help you because that's going to test your RJ45 connection and see if you have a proper connection with that, see if the card is actually working properly. Or you could use that on a switch to see if the switch port's working properly. So that's more of a networking thing. And so best answer, again, is going to be that post-card tester. And you really should have a PCI version of this in your toolkit. And if you can get yourself a PCI Express, it may work, it may not. These little devices, you never know what you're going to get out of them. But if the motherboard has a little digital readout, a little red digital readout for 2 digits, then you know that you have a built-in post-analysis within the motherboard that can read out this information, even if you're not displaying anything on the screen or making any sounds on the computer. So try to take these if you can. Use this stuff if you can. And so that's about it for question 6. That's the bonus question. And I hope you enjoyed the questions. That was a lot. That was a long video. Check out my A+ books and videos. And for more information, you can go to my website, www.davidlproust.com. And definitely check out the A+ Exam Cram or the complete video series. You may enjoy those if you like this video. There's a lot more where that came from, lots of hands-on, and lots more questions and answers. So that's about it for this video, and I'll see you at the next one.